I run the European operation for Kroll bond rating agency. Kroll is an up-and-comer in the credit rating business. Our competitors are the likes of Moody's and Standard & Poor's, who have been in operation for decades, and consumers haven't really had much of an alternative but to use them. So we've come to the market to disrupt that industry. The business has been around for 10 years. In Europe, we've been around for just 3 or 4 years, but things are going very well. People want us to succeed, and there's an enormous amount of goodwill towards us. So I have no doubt that we will continue to thrive. Yeah, so we set up in the US just over 10 years ago. We opened our Dublin office, Glendale, about 4 years ago. And then that was a function of Brexit, that we needed to open an operation in the EU proper, in the EU 27. Since the EU and the UK have formally parted ways as of the end of last year, we've had to open a fully regulated entity in the UK as well. And we have a London office in addition, but our Dublin office remains our EU headquarters. So I've been coming to Ireland for many years. I've been coming here for business since the mid '90s. So I'm very familiar with Dublin and the Irish financial scene. I was actually baptized and confirmed in Ireland. I was married by the same priest as well. My wife is half Irish. So I have a lot of connections with Ireland. I stumbled across the job I'm in at the moment, and the first thing that my boss asked me was, where should we put our European office? And it was a tricky conversation to have. I mean, I'm half Spanish, so I have a natural affinity with Spain as well. I recognize the benefits of maybe being in Frankfurt or Paris in terms of staffing in particular. But really, there was no competition whatsoever when we looked around the major European capitals in Europe. And the IDA was incredibly helpful to us, and the IDA actually introduced us to Glendale, for which we were very grateful. But the availability of staff, obviously English language, just the proximity to London, the fact that there are, there's a good client base in Ireland, really won the day and made it so much easier than any other jurisdiction in Europe. And people may say that you went there because of tax. Actually, tax is probably 5th or 6th down the list in terms of priorities for us. It's a nice to have, but actually, if you can't set a business up and make money, then paying tax is of secondary importance. We looked around a number of offices, whether it be to get a short-term lease in Dublin, which would likely be a sublease, or to go to a serviced office. And we looked around the various providers. We couldn't find anything in terms of sublease that was suitable for us, or suitably small and flexible. Many of the lease terms were quite onerous in terms of the length of the lease, which is obviously a problem when you start a new business. We were sure that the business would work, but you don't quite know how quickly you'll grow. And I think that's the big issue when you start a new business, is that you want the flexibility to expand and contract at will. Sometimes you do contract. And so the prospect of a serviced office was deemed to be quite attractive to us. We looked around the various providers in Dublin, and a little bit like when we looked for the location of our office, there really wasn't any competition. There were other providers that had fancy offices that had graffiti on the wall and had a DJ in the lobby every Friday evening, but actually, when it came down to the stuff you need when you run a business, there was no competition. And Glendale was the most serious and business-minded of all of the options that we had. We looked around at some of the spaces that Glendale had, and Fitzwilliam Place came up as one of the better places. We had the option to take a couple of rooms in Fitzwilliam Place, and given the layout there, we would have the ability to expand into some of the adjacent rooms potentially as we grew. And in fact, that's what we did. We ended up taking, I forget how many, maybe 1 or 2 extra rooms that were attached to that room. We also like the idea of a townhouse, a nice Georgian townhouse. I think certainly my American bosses liked the idea of coming over to Dublin and going into one of those nice fancy townhouses on Fitzwilliam Place. So that certainly added to the appeal. The most important one is actually focus. And this is obviously a little bit of a cliche, I know, but is maintaining focus and making sure that you don't try to be everything to everyone. So, very early in the piece, we realized, which business sectors, were easier to crack than others. And I think mostly we made the right choices. You do need to spread yourself out thin-ish because you don't quite know how, in which areas you're going to definitively succeed. But I think broadly we made the right choices. We didn't spread ourselves out too thin. We didn't overhire, which I think is one of the issues, is getting the kind of the recruitment right. Broadly, I'm comfortable that we stuck to our knitting and stuck to the business plan, which hasn't changed. Maybe luck, maybe we're brilliant tacticians, but I was looking at a business plan just the other day from 2017, and it's identical to the business plan today. We just got lucky, we got it right, and we've stuck to it. I think if facts change, and I think if the underlying operating environment changes, then you have to change. It's your responsibility to change. But it's quite a slow-moving world of regulation that we exist in, and that stuff is glacial in terms of change. So consequently, your strategy doesn't need to change quite so fast. But my advice to any other business leader would be to be prepared to change if the underlying operating environment changes. If you're a retailer in COVID, then you damn well have to change. But for us, it's, as I say, the operating environment is one which allows us to have longer term strategies and goals. I think if you don't have a network already, have a network of people, of like-minded people. I think Glandor was very helpful for that. Glandor was very helpful for connecting us with other entrepreneurs, other members of Glandor, which is useful from a business perspective to bounce ideas off each other, but also it can be quite lonely setting up a new business because there aren't, I was the first employee. I hired another guy. He was based in Dublin. I was based in London. So I was spending half my time in Dublin. So the poor guy was just sitting in this office by himself. Now, having other people around was really good for him. He really appreciated, the conversations around, when he went to get a coffee or in the lobby or with the receptionist, the regular events that Glandor would put on. I think that's probably even more important than the business aspects, actually, is when you start, there's not many of you, and you think you're alone, and you think all the issues that you're facing and the struggles are unique to you. And actually, speaking to someone else who's going through the same thing is incredibly rewarding and encouraging. You think, actually, you know what? It isn't so bad that things are slower than I thought, or I'm struggling to recruit people because they don't know who we are and what we're trying to do and whether we're going to succeed. All these kind of things. Actually, it's nice to share war stories sometimes. It gives you encouragement. My company, I think, was reasonably old-fashioned when it came to working from home before COVID. And I spent much of my time debating with my superiors in New York, whether we could have a formal work from home policy. I'm now arguing with them. I'm asking them if we can go back to the office, I'm begging to go back to the office. So it's funny how things change in such a short period of time. I think the hybrid work approach is something that certainly will work in the short term, and I can see that for the next 6 to 9 months, certainly for the end of 2021, as people become vaccinated, and as people have the option to become vaccinated. If they choose not to, then there's issues to resolve there, which I don't know how to, but there are issues to resolve there, both legal and social. I think that eventually, going back to mostly in-office work, I think is probably what's going to happen. I think that there will be a longish lasting benefit in terms of working from home. I think people can be trusted now to work from home. People know how to do it. It isn't just a case of taking the day off and answering the phone calls and checking emails on your phone. I do think there is a way to do it, and it's more accepted. I do think as managers, it's our responsibility to make sure we preserve that we preserve some of the good stuff that's come out of COVID. And some of that is, that we now know we can trust our workforce to work from home. Turns out it actually works. So we should allow people to do that, allow people to, to benefit from not only the mental health benefits of being at home, but also having a commuting break. And many people have really nasty commutes. Even in Dublin, we used to have a guy that commuted from Wexford. We have people that would sit on the bus for an hour and a half every day. You'd be familiar with such commutes yourself. And if you look at, New York or London, some of those commutes, can exceed 2, 3, sometimes 4 hours. I mean, it's insane. And, and typically the more junior you are, the longer your commute, because you can't afford to live in the city centre. So I think having some kind of egalitarianism in terms of working from home is crucial as well, because previously it was the domain of the senior guys who could work from home. The junior people had to show up every day. And so I think preserving the equality of working from home and having some kind of flexibility is crucial. And certainly I'm very keen to keep that going, to preserve some of those good things that came out of COVID. And I think people will, but people still need offices. So I think Glandor's very well placed. And I think people need flexible offices. I think that's one thing that we've learned as well, that the flexibility of the space, being able to, as I say, expand and contract, I think is crucial. And so that will live long in the memory. And so I think a firm like Glandor will do very well.